Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, Heart and Soul. My name is Jessica, and today I wanted to do a video on an extremely important preventable topic, which is suicide prevention. Before I get into today's video, please like this video if you like it. Please share this on every platform you can, and please subscribe if you haven't done so already. Be sure to hit the notification bell to all, this way you'll be notified anytime I post on my channel. Now let's get into today's video. Suicide prevention awareness is represented by the color yellow. The symbol for suicide is the semicolon. A semicolon is used when an author could have chosen to end the sentence but chose not to. The author is you, and the sentence is your life. It explains Project Semicolon's website, and that's exactly what the semicolon tattoo is working to change, which is the stigma around suicide. Instead of ending your sentence, you now get to finish telling your story, and it needs to be told. Suicide prevention is a collection of efforts to reduce the risk of suicide. These efforts may occur at the individual, relationship, community, and social level. Suicide is often preventable. What does the Suicide Prevention Act mean? Mindwise Interventions has developed the acronym ACT for a simple way for people to remember to respond when someone opens up to you about their suicidal thoughts. ACT stands for Acknowledgement, Care, Tell. Acknowledge, we can all prevent suicide. Understanding the issues concerning suicide and mental health is an important way to take part in suicide prevention. Help others in crisis and change the conversation around suicide. Suicide is not inevitable for anyone. By starting the conversation, providing support, and directing help to those who need it, we can prevent suicides and save lives. Evidence shows that by providing support services, talking about suicide, reducing access to means of self-harm, and following up with loved ones are just some of the actions we can take to help others. By offering immediate counseling to everyone that may need it, local crisis centers provide invaluable support at critical times and connect individuals to local resources and services. Know the risk factors of suicide. Risk factors are characteristics that make it more likely that someone will consider, attempt, or die by suicide. They can't cause or predict a suicide attempt, but they're important to be aware of. They are mental disorders, particularly mood disorders, schizophrenia, anxiety disorders, and certain personality disorders, alcohol and other substance use disorders, feeling hopeless or worthless, impulsive and or aggressive tendencies, history of trauma or abuse, major physical illnesses, previous suicide attempts, family history of suicide, job or financial loss, loss of relationships, easy access to lethal means, local clusters of suicide, lack of social support and sense of isolation, stigma associated with asking for help, lack of health care, especially mental health and substance abuse treatment, cultural and religious beliefs, such as the belief that suicide is a noble resolution of a personal dilemma. Exposure to others who have died by suicide in real life or via the media or internet. Know the warning signs. Some warning signs may help you determine if a loved one is at risk for suicide, especially if the behavior is new, has increased, or seems related to a painful event, loss, or change. If you or someone you know are exhibiting any of these warning signs, then seek help and call the Lifeline. They are talking about wanting to die or killing themselves, like searching online or buying a gun, talking about feeling hopeless or having no reason to live, talking about feeling trapped or in an unbearable pain, talking about being a burden to others, increasing the use of drugs and or alcohol, acting anxious or agitated, behaving recklessly, sleeping too little or too much, withdrawing or isolating themselves, showing rage or talking about seeking revenge on someone. Extreme mood swings. Suicide is a serious public health problem that can have lasting harmful effects on individuals, families, and communities. There are many facts that contribute to suicide. The goal of suicide prevention is to reduce factors that increase risk and increase factors that promote resilience. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the U.S. It was responsible for more than 47,500 deaths in 2019 alone. In 2019, 12 million American adults seriously thought about suicide. 3.5 million made a plan, and 1.4 million actually attempted suicide. Suicide rates in the U.S. have increased about 33% from 1999 to 2019, with a small decline in 2019. Suicide is a leading cause of death, meaning that there is one death by suicide every 11 minutes. The number of people who think about suicide or attempt suicide is even higher than that. Suicide affects all ages. It is the second leading cause of death for people between the ages of 10 and 34. It's the fourth leading cause among people ages 34 to 54, and it's the fifth leading cause among people ages 45 to 54 years old. Some groups have higher suicide rates than others. Suicide rates vary by race, ethnicity, age, and many other factors. The highest rates are among American Indian, Alaska Native, and non-Hispanic white populations. Other Americans with higher than average suicide rates are veterans, people who live in rural areas, and workers in certain industries and occupations like mining and construction. Young people who are lesbians, gay, or bisexual have a higher rate of suicide ideation and behavior compared to other peers who identify as straight. Suicide and suicide attempts cause serious emotional, physical, and economic impacts. People who attempt suicide and survive may experience serious injuries that can have a life-term effect on their health. They may also experience depression and other mental health concerns. The good news is that more than 90% of people who attempt suicide and survive never go on to die by suicide. Suicide and suicide attempts affect the health and well-being of friends, loved ones, co-workers, and the community. When people die by suicide, their surviving family and friends may experience shock, anger, guilt, symptoms of depression or anxiety, and may even experience thoughts of suicide themselves. The financial toll of suicide on society is also costly. Suicides and suicide attempts cost the nation over $170 billion per year in lifetime medical and work loss costs alone. Suicide is preventable, and everyone has a role to play to save lives and create healthy and strong individuals, families, and communities. In some cases, a recent stressor or sudden catastrophic event, failure, or can leave people feeling desperate and unable to see a way out, and that becomes a tipping or turning point towards the idea of suicide. A recent CDC, or Centers for Disease Control, reports highlights of the complexity of suicide. While a mental health condition may be a contributing factor for many people, the report notes that many factors contribute to suicide among those with and without known mental health conditions. A relationship problem was the top factor contributing to suicide, followed by crisis in the past or upcoming 2 weeks in problematic substance abuse. CDC reports that about half, 54% of people who died by suicide did not have a known mental health condition. However, many of them may have been dealing with mental health challenges that they had not had been diagnosed or known to others around them. Both guilt and shame play a major role in suicide. Although feelings of shame are much more prominent than guilt in the dynamics leading up to suicidal thoughts and behaviors, nonetheless, experiences of shame often go unnoticed by both the person feeling suicidal and the therapist during therapy sessions. Shame often causes embarrassment for people and isn't always talked about openly or even at all. The importance of considering both shame and guilt in connection with suicide extends to survivors of suicide as well. Although often overlooked, the friends and family members are also very vulnerable to experiences or have experienced shame and guilt in the aftermath of a loved one's suicide. Relatives of people who attempt or complete suicide often blame themselves or become very angry. They may see the suicide attempt as selfish. However, people who attempt suicide often mistakenly believe that they are doing their family or relatives a favor by taking themselves out of this world. They feel like a burden more than anything else. A man named Sam Dillon Finch wrote a piece entitled 5 Things Suicide Loss Survivors Should Know from someone who's attempted. His friend committed suicide, which he had done a decade ago. He tried to do as well. He wanted to share the commonalities in hopes that if you have survived a loss like that, you might be able to find some comfort in hearing from someone who has been there before. If your loved one could reach you now, these are some of the things that they would want you to know. I took the importance and direct quotes and phrasing directly from his paper. Suicide is more complex than a decision. People who attempt suicide aren't always convinced it's the only option. It's more often that they have exhausted their emotional reserves to continue pursuing those options. It is in many ways the ultimate state of burnout. The very fact that someone can progress that far is a much stronger reflection of the state of mental health in our country. We didn't fail, and neither did you. The system failed us. The time when someone in crisis has to expend the most energy in order to keep themselves alive, to ignore the outright despair, is often the time when they have the very least energy available to do so. Which is all to say that suicide is a tragic outcome of extraordinary circumstances that in reality few of us have a lot of control over. Number 2, we are often very, very conflicted. It is much more likely that they were conflicted, which is why being suicidal is such a confusing state to be in. Imagine a scale being tipped back and forth until one side is finally outweighed by the other, a trigger, a moment of impulsivity, a window of opportunity that disrupts the precarious balance that allowed us to survive. The back and forth is exhausting and it muddles our judgment. The quote helps capture the inner conflict. We are not our thoughts. We're the people listening to them. Suicidal thoughts, once they snowball, can become an avalanche that drowns out a part of us that would otherwise choose differently. It's not that we are conflicted so much as the suicidal thoughts are so incredibly loud. This also is why some of us often unconsciously sabotage our own attempts. We might choose a time or a place when it's possible that will be discovered. We might drop hints about our mental state that are nearly undetectable to others. We might choose a method that isn't reliable. Even for those who meticulously planned and appeared very committed to killing themselves, they are in a way sabotaging themselves. The longer we take to plan, the more we leave open to the possibility of an intervention or slip-up. We desperately want peace and ease, which is really the only thing we are sure of. A suicide attempt doesn't reflect how we felt about our life, our potential, or about you. At least not as much as it reflects our state of mind in the moment when we attempted. Number 3, we didn't want to hurt you. I even sabotaged my attempt to look like an accident because I didn't want people I loved to believe I had done it on purpose. I didn't want them to blame themselves, and by staging it, I did what little I could in my mind to lessen their suffering. I did not know on some level that my death would be painful for people that I love. I can't articulate how heavily that weighed on my heart, but after a certain point when you feel like you're burning alive, all you can think of is how to put out the fire as quickly as possible. When I finally did attempt, I was so disassociated and had such severe tunnel vision that much of that evening is entirely blacked out in my mind. Suicide attempts are often as much an emotional event as they are a neurological one. When Sam spoke with other attempt survivors, many of us share the same feelings. We didn't want to hurt our loved ones, but that tunnel vision and state of acute pain, along with the sense that we were a burden on those we care about, can override our judgments. Number 4, we knew we were loved. A suicide attempt doesn't mean someone didn't believe that they were loved. It doesn't mean your loved one didn't know you cared or believe that they wouldn't get the unconditional acceptance or care that you, without a doubt, had to offer. I wish that love alone could have been enough to keep someone here with us. If love were enough, we would see much fewer deaths by suicide. And I know, believe me, I do, how painful it is to accept that we can love someone to the moon and back, hell to Pluto and back, and that still isn't enough to make them stay. If only. But I can tell you that your love, what your love did do, if that helps. It made their time here on earth so much more meaningful. I can promise you that. It sustained them in many ways, many dark moments that they have never told you about. If we truly felt like we were capable of staying for you, we would have. Before my attempt, I wanted nothing more than to get better and be strong enough to stay. But as the walls closed in on me, I stopped believing I could. Your loved one's suicide attempt says nothing about how much you love them, nor about how much they loved you. But your grief does, because the pain that you're experiencing in their absence speaks volumes how deeply you cherish them and still do. And if your feelings are that powerful, then odds are good that the love between you and them was too. Mutual, cherished, understood. And the way that they died can never change that. I promise you that. Number 5, it's not your fault. It's easy to fall down the rabbit hole of wondering what we could have done differently. It's gut-wrenching, but also in some ways comforting, because it deludes us into thinking that we had some kind of control over our outcome. Wouldn't the world feel so much safer if it were possible to save everyone we loved, to spare them from their suffering with the right words, the right decisions? That those sheer force of will, we could save everyone, or at the very least, the people we can't imagine our lives without. My sense of safety was shattered when I lost one of my best friends. Even as someone who works in mental health, I miss the signs. It's still an ongoing process for me to fully surrender to the fact that no one, no matter how smart, how loving, how determined they might be, can keep someone else alive. Did you make mistakes? I don't know. Maybe. You might have said the wrong thing. You might have turned them away one night without realizing that there would be consequences. You might have underestimated how much pain they were in. But when a pot of water is on the stove, even if you turn up the flame, you aren't responsible for when you turn up the flame and it boils over. If left on the burner long enough, it's always going to come to a boil. Our mental health system is supposed to provide a safety net that takes the pot off the burner, so that no matter what happens with the flame, it's never going to a fever pitch and boil over. You aren't responsible for that systematic failure. No matter what mistakes you did or didn't make, you were failed too, because you were made to feel responsible for your loved one's life, which is much too heavy a responsibility for any person to carry. You're not a crisis professional, and even if you are, you're not perfect. You're only human. You love them the best way you know how. I wish so desperately I could have been enough for both our sakes. I know it is painful to accept it wasn't. I found myself wondering, why did they die? And yet I am still here. Someone very close to me in my everyday life also wondered the same thing. They wondered why and felt like nobody wanted them after several failed suicide attempts. Not even heaven or hell or life in general wanted them. The struggle is so real and so emotionally and physically draining to your everyday life in general. Sometimes it's hard to come back from that, but you can come back from it. Trust me when I tell you that. Now back to Sam's personal story about suicide. That is the one question I still can't answer. To try and reckon with that is a reminder of how deeply unfair it all is. I don't think anything can say will change the injustice of losing someone this way. But what I've learned since then is that grief is a powerful teacher. It challenges me again and again to recommit to living a life with meaning, to give my heart away freely and readily, to speak with truth and power, and most importantly, to let the life I lead be living dedication to this person I love so, so much. I've learned to live alongside my grief, to let it transform me as radically as possible. Each moment I find the strength to do what's right, to be brave and relentless in fighting for a more just world, or to simply just let myself laugh without feeling self-conscious. I become the living and breathing altar, or everything my friends stood for: compassion, courage, joy. I won't pretend to have a good answer for why your loved one is gone, but I can tell you, both as a survivor of loss and of an attempt, the life is so unquestionably precious, and I believe that more fiercely than I ever have before. You're still here, and for whatever the purpose might be, you still have the chance to do something extraordinary with your life. My greatest wish for you and for anyone who's grieving is to know that your pain doesn't have to consume you. Let it be your compass that leads you to new and exciting places. Let it bring you closer to your purpose. Let it remind you how precious your own being is. You're a part of legacy your loved ones left behind, and every moment you choose to live fully and love deeply, you bring a beautiful part of them back to life. Fight for your own life the way you so desperately wish you could have fought for theirs. You're just as worth it, I promise you. Sam Dillon Finch is a leading advocate for the LGBTQ community and mental health community, having gained international recognition for his blog, Let's Queer Things Up, which went viral in 2014. As a journalist and media strategist, Sam has published extensively on topics like mental health, transgender identity, disabilities, politics, law, and much more. Bringing his combined expertise in public mental health and digital media, Sam currently works as a social editor at Hotline. I absolutely love this article. I feel like it gave such a great first-hand insight into the mind of someone that struggles with suicidal thoughts and feelings. Suicide is completely preventable, and there is help, good help available to you. You don't have to feel like you are alone and no one understands you. Other people do care, sometimes way more than you may even be aware of. You have to be able to trust someone and be honest about your true feelings and intentions when it comes to harming yourself in any way at all. You are worth it, more than worth it. Just remember that when you decide to commit suicide, you're not only making a final decision for yourself, but you're making that final choice for everyone that loves and cares for you. You are leaving behind immense pain for your loved ones. Don't ever feel like death is an answer or has to be your only way out. It's not, and it doesn't have to be that way. You're not a burden. You never have been. You are special, whether you know it or not. You are here for a specific reason, and one you may never come to know. If you ever get the chance, life has a lot to offer if you just let it. Share your story. You expressing your thoughts and feelings. You not only save your own life, but also have the chance to save someone else's that may be going through the same struggles in their own life. I hope this video you were able to get a little more insight on suicide and suicide prevention. This is such an important topic that needs plenty of spotlight to spread the word. Suicide is preventable, and there are many ways to stop it. We must come together and recognize that some people, although they may not appear to be suffering on the outside, they are absolutely dying on the inside. By understanding, you never know what someone else may be going through in their own life. I hope that anyone who is struggling with suicidal thoughts realizes that there is a way out, and that on the other side, there is a very deserving life awaiting you. And I hope that you take that life and live it happily. Before I go, please like this video if you like it. Please share it everywhere you can. We must spread the word about suicide. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And please comment down below your thoughts and feelings, your own personal stories relating to suicide, or anything you want to share at all. You don't have to share, but if you want to, I would love to hear your stories, your words of wisdom, and just be understanding. Just be understanding, and don't be judgmental. Sometimes listening is the best medicine. Till next time, thank you so much, and be safe. Bye.